What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Call Her Creator, powered by Stan. I am your host, Caitlin Rhodes, and today we are talking about making better hooks and captions. I feel like it's one of the biggest things that we cannot neglect when we are doing our marketing, whether it's on Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn or Threads, whatever it is. Storytelling is so huge nowadays. So we're going to go over some different tips that I give to my team here at my social media agency that you guys can take, and hopefully it'll help you make better captions. Now, when you have a better caption, you end up pulling people in, they end up watching your video, and then maybe you end up converting them as well. So we'll go through all of those today. But first, I've been working on some self-improvement. I read a lot of books. I don't know why. At a very young age, I've always just been like a self-improvement girly. It's so weird because I just remember being like 8 years old and my mom or my grandma would take me shopping and I'd be able to pick out one thing. And I wouldn't pick out like baby dolls or board games or stuff like that. I'd go over and pick out like a planner or a journal or a book because I just wanted to make myself better and better. So this week, well, probably this month, I'm doing a little self-mentoring, but utilizing a book. So the book I'm reading right now, it's by Robin Sharma, The 8 Hidden Habits to Live Your Richest Life. But it's not talking about wealth. It's saying the wealth that money can't buy. So each day I've been reading a chapter, which is really helping me with like my mental load and just kind of like helping with imposter syndrome and stuff like that. So I read a little excerpt this morning and I wanted to share it with you guys. So this chapter is dedicated to honoring your greatness. So this one says, a simple idea that's often too neglected: to appreciate yourself. For all you've gone through and all you've become, for all the fears you've faced and found freedom from, for the dreams you not only dreamed, but had bravery to make real, for all the people you've helped and for all the good you have done, you matter more than you know. So please do not measure your worthiness by what the majority tells you that you should be, do, and have. You being here with me is no accident at all. And then he goes into talking about how like culture tells us we should be one thing, but really like if you focus on yourself and appreciate all the things you do and how you service people, it should help like your inner workings and like your heart and knowing that you are great. So this is what I want to start off today's podcast with: is you are great. All of these little things you are doing, I promise you they are going to snowball into this big, huge positive effect on your life. The little things that we do daily is what really rolls into our overall plan in life. I just did a keynote last week for these girls that it's like a lot of them, this is their first job. They're leasing assistants. But what we talked about is the power in the present right now. Like, yes, you can have these amazing goals for yourself in the future, but what you really want to focus on is your now, because what you do now, what you do today is what's going to help you create something bigger tomorrow. So I've always wanted to create a course or write a book or little things like, think of like big goals that you've had for yourself. What are you doing now to help you achieve those bigger goals? So for me, I'm reading a lot of self-improvement books and reading how other people write books because I don't know, a big dream of mine in the future, not now, is to write a book. And I don't know if it's going to be based on social media or just self-empowering, like things that I can do, things that other people can do to build a business. I'm not really sure where my mind's going with the book, but I'm doing little things now to prep me for when that time comes. So whatever your goal is, make sure that you're doing the little details now to make that goal come true. So we're going to be going over some specific ways for you to improve your captions and your hooks. I told you guys at the beginning of this episode, storytelling is so huge. It's really what helps us connect with our audience. So you really need to spend some time thinking about these stories that you're sharing online. One of our new social media managers here, we're teaching her about writing captions. And like her first week here, she was writing like 1 or 2 line captions. And I'm like, nope, we got to improve this. We got to get better. Like, you didn't give me enough here. So she has started going back and rewriting these captions based on the full story. And Darby, my assistant, truly, she had a really good tip for Alex. And it was basically saying like, when you're writing the caption, you need to give as much context as it takes so that if I wasn't able to see the reel or the image or the carousel, I could still understand what the post is about just by reading the caption. And I thought that was super duper powerful. So before I even get into the tips that I have for you, the first tip from my team is making sure that your captions give enough context. You could even like compare this to when you're talking to ChatGPT and you want him to help you with something, but ChatGPT needs more context from you than you just asking it a simple question. So do captions. If people maybe they're blind, maybe they're vision impaired, and they're scrolling through Instagram, you want to still be able to talk to those people, right? So that's when captions come into play. You can also use the alt text when you're posting that stuff. That's under your settings before you post the post. But writing out the caption, giving them enough context, adding in keywords that have to do with the post, that sets you up for success when you're writing your captions. So to begin with improving your captions, let's start with tip number 1, which is to start with a hook. So you want to grab attention in the first couple of seconds that people are reading. So you can't keep putting these generic sentences out every single time you do these captions. You need to pull them in within the first 3 to 5 seconds, just like your reels. The first 3 to 5 seconds that they're reading, they need to be pulled in. So an example of this is, let's say like I'm an Instagram coach and I'm teaching someone about Instagram and profile optimization. What sounds better to you guys? Let's listen. Example number 1, make sure you change these things. Let's just say that was my caption because my reel was me explaining specific things that you need to change in your profile. So my caption was just, make sure you change these things. Thumbs up emoji. Like what things do we need to change, Caitlin? So that's where you could turn that around and hook them in with something like, what if I told you missing this on your profile could be losing you followers? Isn't that better than make sure you change these things? It's much more detailed. It's like a hook. It grabs you in. It grabs your attention. So when you are working on these captions, think about how to hook them in. Think about a pain point, which kind of flows me into another tip I have here. So start with a hook. Tip number 2 is focus on the pain points of your audience. You want to speak directly to your audience's problems. You want to show how your service or your product helps them. So you need to make sure you are bringing their pain point to the forefront. So for example, a good caption starter would be something like, struggling to stay consistent with your Instagram posting? Let me share these 3 easy tips to improve right now. So you can see I started that hook to the caption out with, hey, are you struggling to stay consistent? That's the pain point. They're struggling with consistency. Let me share 3 easy tips for you to implement right now. Super simple, super to the point, but it's touching those pain points and it's hooking them in. And that rolls into storytelling. And again, that's what I started this podcast off talking about, is storytelling. Captions should tell a story about the post, about your brand, about your journey, about a specific moment related to your business, because stories are actually what connect your audience emotionally to your content. So an example of storytelling in your caption could be something like, I was terrified when I posted my first reel, ... Fast forward to 2 years, and here's what I've learned from growing my account to 171,000 followers. Did I not just tell you a story right there? I did. I was scared. I was terrified. And then you fast forward, and now here's what I've learned, and here's how I've grown. So you're telling them your problem. You're telling them how you faced it, how long it took you, and then what was the outcome? You grew XYZ. Storytelling. That's where I'm getting at. Now, another good thing to think about when you're doing your captions is, I tell you all this every podcast episode and I feel like a broken record, so I'm sorry, but you really need to understand who you are talking to be able to personalize those captions to your audience. So, we talked about pain points, but you probably know like your perfect audience, you know what their pain points are, but do you know who your perfect audience is? Is it specifically women, or is it specifically men? Or is it both? Because if it's specifically women, you can start these captions off with something like, hey girl, I see you. That's going to connect me to you way better than, hey, I've seen you all struggling out there. Oh, she's talking to the masses. Versus, hey girl, I see you struggling. Okay, she's talking to me. See how that personalization really helps? That's why too, like when I talk to clients, sometimes I'm like, okay, what's your perfect audience? What's the gender? Okay, are they a mom? Because I personally connect with moms. So like I know how to talk to moms like, hey mom, I see you, you're tired. So I'll ask them specific things like that. But maybe you're not a mom. Maybe you're not a woman. Maybe you're a man and you're a gamer. So you could say something like, hey, you stay up all night playing Fortnite and now you want to make money today as a side hustle. I don't know, whatever it is. But you see how I'm like being very specific with who I'm talking to. That is what's going to stand out in your captions when you're writing people. Now, another thing that is super important to me when it comes to captions is line breaks and breaking them up. And I know this sounds silly and some people would say, oh, that's more aesthetics, but no, it's really not. It's really just helping people to be able to read and digest what you have said to them. So another rule that we have here at Influence Marketing Studio is when you're creating your captions, I need to see line breaks. I need to see the hook at the top and then maybe a space. And then you could say a sentence or two and then another space and then a sentence or two and another space, but I line break it up. Once they've done the line breaking, then I'll make them add in emojis. We'll sprinkle in 1 to 2 emojis, maybe 3, depending how long that caption is. And then third, we do bullet points to make it even easier to digest. So, you've got these line breaks, which is making it easier to read. But when you give me bullet points and help me summarize what I'm reading, heck yes, sign me up for that caption. That is super duper important. Don't sleep on caption aesthetics. And what I mean by that is make sure you are breaking up those lines so it's easy to read, it's easy to digest. Make sure you're sprinkling in those emojis so you're catching my eye when I'm scrolling. And if you have bullet points in there, that's icing on the cake because then you're able to summarize what it is that you're talking about so I could scan through if I don't have time to read it all. Another tip I have for you guys when it comes to caption is if there's a way to tell a real life story or like a testimonial, those always perform really well too. So for example, I have a client that I'm coaching right now. She's a realtor. And she had a really good reel. And it was talking about how she negotiated off like almost $30,000 off the asking price of this home. But her caption was like 2 sentences long. And it was something like, I can't even remember what it said. It maybe said something like, a day in the life of the realtor. I helped them get $28,000 off of their home. But that's all she wrote. So I was talking to her and I'm like, Rachel, we need to dig deeper here. You need to tell me the 411 on this. Tell me the story. Like, how did this happen? Because of course you're going to grab attention by telling someone that you got them $30,000 off of asking price of a home. But even more so is if you tell me that John and Sue had been looking for a home for 2 years and nothing was coming and they couldn't afford one and a deal fell through or something that's going to tell me a story and I'm going to be able to like emotionally connect with that audience, I'm going to love that. Or maybe I don't emotionally connect, but I relate to their story. Maybe it's Jack and Sam and they really wanted this dream home of theirs, but it was a little over it was a little bit over their budget. So then Rachel did her magic to negotiate enough money off of the asking price to where now it's in their budget and they were able to move into their dream home. Like, heck yeah, sign me up. Those are the things that we need to read. Those are the things we need to hear about. Those are the things that not only help people to understand what your post is about, but it also helps them see you as the industry expert. When you're giving these real life stories, they're going to be like, oh, I want to use Rachel for my realtor. She knows what she's doing. She helped Jack and Sam. She helped Lisa and Frank. Like Lisa Frank, hey, shout out to my 90s girls. But those are the things that we need to do to help connect your audience to your content, which will then lead to you. Now, another tip that often it doesn't go unseen or heard because everyone talks about SEO, but I think a lot of people misunderstand or misuse the SEO strategy when it comes to writing captions. So SEO does not just mean sprinkling a bunch of different keywords into your caption or adding them at the bottom of your caption. Like, no. When I say SEO, it means search engine optimization, and I want you to write me a story or a paragraph, and I want you to use the words the way that they should be used. I don't want to see you keyword stuffing to where when I read this caption, it makes no sense at all, and I can tell that you were just trying to write it for Google or write it for the search indexes. You need to make sure that your stuff makes sense. There was a little bit of a time there when people were writing captions and then I saw them writing like 5 or 6 keywords at the end of the paragraph of the caption. I'm just like, what are they doing? And a lot of people thought that maybe writing that and stuffing their captions with keywords is what SEO meant, but that's not what we mean when we say SEO. It just means to naturally add in these keywords that make sense for your story or your post that you can write as a caption. Now, the last tip I have for you guys is having relatability in there, vulnerability. And what I mean by that is showing your human side of your business. A touch of humor or sharing your struggles, this makes your brand or your business more relatable and more approachable. Like, the reason that the Kardashians are so popular is not because they're relatable at this point, because they're way out of our league when it comes to money. But in those beginning days, do y'all remember Keeping Up with the Kardashians 10 years ago? Whenever, Kim was living in an apartment just like us, and she was buying purses just like us, and she was doing duties and her day-to-day looked just like ours. That's how the Kardashians got so famous. And now, they're getting plastic surgery or buying $1 million cars or homes. They're doing that now because they started off being relatable. And so when you're doing these captions or you're writing these hooks, you want to be relatable. Don't make your captions so personalized to where they can't connect with you. You need to somehow pull your audience into that. Now, there's caveats there. Like if you're telling a personal story or how you transformed something, of course, the caption's probably going to be all about you. But let's talk about Rachel for a second. And another example with her. She had this really good reel that she had posted. So this is a hook tip for you guys, not necessarily a caption. She had a hook and it said, "Hi, I'm Rachel. This is what it's like being a realtor." And then she had these big scissors and she was cutting them at the screen. And I was like, Rachel, this is so good, but let's kind of personalize it just a little bit to where more people will share it. Because not a lot of people are going to share, "Hey, I'm Rachel," to their Instagram stories, but they might share, "Hey, this is what it's like being a realtor during election year of 2025. You know what I mean? It's more relatable to them versus all about Rachel. So just little personalization, storytelling, but also being relatable, little things like that really go a long way. All right, so this episode was short and sweet, but I thought it was something that I needed to talk about because I do feel like captions are super important. Again, we want to give enough context to where people can still understand what you're talking about, whether they can see your reel or your carousel or your post, they can still understand what your story is about by reading the caption. If you thought that this was a helpful episode today, I know it was bite-sized, but I'd like to do another episode strictly about storytelling and how you can use creative ways to sell your product or services by storytelling. So that sounds like something you'd be willing to listen to. Let me know, send me a DM, and make sure you follow us over on Call Her Creator over on Instagram. And I'm also on Instagram, the Caitlin Rhodes. Thank you guys so much. Leave us a review if you listened to today's episode.